Hi there. This is Doyall Sams. I've learned that from the hospital. And my birth date is 03/29/1948. I happened to be born 20 minutes before my twin brother. So he came out with being Royal, middle name. His first name was Wendell. My first name was Lyndall. And my middle name is Doyle. And the last names are Sams. So we had an older brother. He was 4 years older than us, Roddy. His middle name is Kane, Kayne, and pretty cool brother. He didn't like it when we were born because everybody kept saying, "Oh, the twins, the twins," you know. And so he left home when we were about a month old, and the folks had to go get him. He walked up to my grandparents, and so that became an interesting situation. But Roddy was like a mentor to us. He was a great brother. He taught us how to skate, and ski, and shovel snow, and ice skate, and sled. We didn't have much of hills, but he was able to get us to be able to slide down a hill. So that was the activities most of the time. He taught us how to play basketball, baseball, horse, just different things like that. So, and I don't know how he learned it because we sure didn't know how. Then we had a brother that was younger, 4 years younger, and his name was Dallas Craig Sams. Pretty cool little guy. We really liked having him, and so that was our family: mom, dad, and the four of us boys. It was hard for Royal and me, even today, to say I. It's always we, and so that was fun. We started school in a one-room schoolhouse. It was actually two rooms, but it was actually all of us were in one room, and we had 24 kids usually. The reason I'm doing this is because we just came up to Alaska, and we're spending time with Mike and Jane. And Mike Ringler grew up about half a mile away from us, and he was 15 days older than we were, and really a nice young guy. And we had fun just growing up in country school, and then we went to high school. That was a shock to go from having 4 kids in our class every year. It was always me, Royal, Rhonda, and Mike. So when we got to high school, or town school, it's 7th grade, we had to learn how to work with a 2-story building and a whole bunch of rooms and 119 kids in our class. So that was pretty tough.
What's your first memory with Mike Ringler?
Mike, I can't remember when we were tiny. He's got pictures of us when we were probably 6, something like that, 5 or 6. I remember country school and playing with him, and in the wintertime we had to have inside games because it was too cold outside. So we played volleyball, kickball, and I think that's it. Anyway, but Mike was always kind. His folks were very sharp people. They had the farm kitty-cornered from ours. And
they grew grapes.
When we were younger, he let us come over and pick grapes that they had grown. I don't know how they grew with that climate, but they were so sweet, very good.
But you had to know how to eat them.
Yeah, he taught us how to eat them. You put them in your mouth and you squeeze the rind off and suck the juice off of that, and then you ate the meat and got rid of the seeds, and that was pretty tart.
So really the skin was the best part.
Yeah, the skin was great. Okay, great. Let's see.
What was your favorite memory of growing up on the farm, or funniest memory? How about that?
Funniest memory. Well, I used to want to be a clown, and I'd go around saying that I was apey, and that wasn't very fun, really, when I grew up. But yeah, really, and I wanted to be a clown, kind of a class clown. But uh, let's see, let's see here. This shouldn't be this hard.
No, it's fine.
I wrote a little bit. Sarah gave me a thing to write on storytelling, and so that's helped me out. When Mom was 18, she married my dad, Lloyd, and he was 26, and they had waited for 4 years before they had us. They were in a one-room house with no electricity and no water. They had to carry the water. In the wintertime, they had to break the ice on the water pan. And then when Roddy was about to be born, they moved into the house that I was raised in. And that was nice. I mean, we still didn't have electricity, and we still didn't have running water, but at least we had a well that was out in the in the well house, and that worked out pretty good. Then when we were, I think when we were born, we got Dad and Mom got electricity, so that helped. And then when we were 12, we got water to the house. Now the hardest part about that was that Dad and his hired man had to dig it in by hand pretty much. And then after they got that done, then they decided to put a basement under the house. And that was very fun because when Dallas was born, he had baby bottles, and my dad was setting off dynamite under the house, and had to tell Mom, okay, go outside, we're going to set off some dynamite. So finally she just stayed in the house. She knew it wasn't going to blow. Trying to think. I remember I had a birthday party, and I got to bring my friends, and so I brought Mike and Rodney Miller, and then Royal brought his friends, and I think that was Mike Ward, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but that was fun, a good time. Let's see.
What was some of the things you did on the farm growing up?
Okay, growing up, that was easy. When we were kids, of course we just played a lot. Dad did as much as he could, and being the only guy to do it. Mom would help him, but most of the time she's pretty busy with us kids. So we finally we got so that we could help milk the cows, and Royal and I, it would take both of us to empty a milker from the cows, and so that helped him. He could be out farming while we were milking. And then we had a milking situation where you could milk the cows, and it was on pulsating electrical. And but in order to cool the milk, we ran water down the outside of it that cooled the milk as it ran through, and then the water would warm, and then that would go into the cow tank, and then it would thaw the frozen water that was in the tank and the ice. And then we got so we could handle the milkers ourselves, and then we had to feed the calves, and most of the time it was pretty enjoyable. The little calves were always nice, and they wanted to get more than they had, and they'd hit the bucket and knock it around. But that was the way it was. I remember when we had sheep, my dad had a liking to have a little bit of everything. So he had sheep, and he had some pigs, and then he had horses. And so the sheep were always fun. The little lambs that were bum lambs, they called them. You'd have to feed them with a bottle, and they were so sweet. Um, and then sometimes if the mother wouldn't take them, then Dad would try to make them take it, and that wasn't always easy. We had pigs, and everybody had to name their pigs, and right now I can't think of the names of them. Roddy had one that was named Myrtle, and mine was Penny, and I can't remember what Royal's was. And then we had horses. Grandpa Sams had given us each a horse, but because Royal and I were twins, we got one horse. So our horse was Diamond. Roddy's horse was Dixie, and then Dallas, because he was little, he got this little tiny horse, so its name was Tiny. I remember when we got our first bicycles, we were about probably 8 years old, and we had to learn how to ride it, and we didn't have training wheels. So as we were riding, it had that bar across the top, and of course you'd hit your wavels on them, and so you had to learn how to go one side on one side of the bar, and then cock yourself to the other side of the bar so you wouldn't crush yourself. And so we caught on to that pretty quick, and we learned how to balance. And we always had to go by a stump though, and get on a stump and then push yourself off, and then that would get you going. But that was quite an achievement. But we have pictures of all of us neighbor kids on bicycles riding down the road. We finally got a tar road in front of our place probably when we were 12 or 13. Before that it was dirt, and they had to grade it ever so often, and that made it a little hard to ride. We didn't have skateboards or anything like that in that day, so one thing we did have, Dad would make stilts for us, and that was just two by twos, and then an angle that was nailed on to the back side of the deal, and then a strap, otherwise your feet would fall out. And that was stilts, so we learned how to walk stilts. And so then as we grew up and got older, then our responsibility got bigger, and we then learned how to drive tractor. And
Did you read comic books or watch baseball or sports or?
Well, we didn't have TV until we were 13 or 14. It was the first time we had TV.
Did you hear about baseball?
We played pony, where you did workup, but Dad wasn't into sports. At the end of every year of grade school, the schools would all compete. They'd get a couple schools together and compete, and we'd play ball against each other. But that was the embarrassing thing, is because you didn't want to be the last one chosen, and so But that was part of life. You learned that you had to try to be better. So that was the end of the school picnic. Was fantastic. That was a lot of fun. All the moms got together and brought food, and of course we all wanted to know which was a mom's food, and that's what we wanted to eat, instead of trying other food.
Families would make such different stuff.
Oh yeah, and every kid his mom was the same. Now if you ever read the book How to Speak Minnesotan, it talks about the different jellies that there are, and every family had a different jelly. Of course, they just came out with the colored marshmallows, so there was pink and green and white, and somebody would decide that they could put marshmallows into Jell-O, and then other people thought they could put I forget what else they had in it. Oh, pineapple. I think every Betty Crocker cookbook was used in how to do that. And then you had hot dishes and casseroles, and there was ones with macaroni with um, uh, cheese chopped up in it and peas. There was some good ones. So anyway, you're kind of glad those days are over. But and then every year, Christmas play, they had the teacher picked out a play that you could have, and usually they were funny. Some of them were religious, but when I was in second grade, I think it was, I had a small part, and I got interested in watching my younger brother Dallas walking around and how my folks weren't taking care of him, and all of a sudden I realized that everybody was quiet, and I looked, and I was supposed to say my part, and all of a sudden I go, whee! And that's all it was whee! And they said, what is it, Clancy, or something like that. And I said, oh, it's 2 days till Christmas. And that was my part, and I screwed it up. That was the beginning of my lack of attention. So that was part of it. But having to learn parts and work in groups of people. I was talking to Mike Ringler's wife today, and she got to go to town school. We had to go to country school, which was great. But how you learned to interact with kids because of that was important. We each, going back to the farm, we each selected a cow that we claimed, and so that was big. I think ownership, we didn't get any money for them, but we got to raise them and claim them. And then I think Royal had Patty, I had Sally, Dallas had Flossie, and I can't remember who Roddy had. And then when we moved back there, when the kids were growing up, then the cows were all numbered, so we had number 100 and number 1, 69, 49, that's it. And then some did have names. We had Smiley and Friendly, and so it was a good life. I mean, if you wanted to do life over again, I think you wouldn't want to. We learned a ton. I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but every winter when I went back to farm with my folks, I would go to the South Woods every winter and cut down a number of trees and clean them up and take them up for firewood. So looking back on it, I wish I wouldn't have cleared that field off, but we did, and that's what you did back then.
And it was sustainable. Like, you weren't using machinery to clear them out. Like,
no.
You were doing what you could. You could have maybe planted a couple, but
yeah,
that's whatever.
That's what everybody was doing.
You needed to eat.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah. You can always look back and say, what if?
Yeah.
What we could have done, what we didn't do.
When was the first time you got to sing in choir?
My mom had us sing as a quartet when we were little, and me and Royal especially, we got to sing together. So we couldn't even say our R's yet. So my cousin still makes fun of us because we sang Mansion Over the Hilltop. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright valley. But we couldn't say our R's, so it was kind of funny when we were nevermore roam, type of thing.
Woes.
Yeah. So it was so my mom had us. It was pretty instrumental in music, but what we didn't realize is that Dad was a good guitar player, and about the time we got so that we could have sung with him, he fell and he dislocated his finger, and it was crooked from that time on, so he couldn't work on the guitar, on the neck of the guitar. So we never heard him.
Did you play instruments growing up?
Yeah. We I played piano, and we all took lessons, but I took lessons longer. And then I played the baritone in high school, and Royal played the tuba, and Roddy played the cornet. I wanted to play the drums, but Roddy said anybody could play drums, so I couldn't play drums. So, shame on you, Roddy. But that was good. I mean, from having piano lessons, I knew my rhythm, and we could harmonize. Me and Royal could do really good. And Roddy sang the lead, and I sang tenor. I think Dallas finally got so he could sing alto, and then Royal sang bass. So it was fun. It was, have the little Sams kids come up and sing. That was pretty important, and my mom liked that. And let's see, we had a huge silo. We had Dad put up a silo that was 12 by 50, so 12 by 50 feet, and we put silage in it, and at the fall of the year. And a lot of people made fun of Dad because he had this 50-foot tall silo, and he had chopped corn put in it. And then he built another one, and he was a pretty good farmer, so he built another one. And then we eventually built a harvester silo, which are the blue silos. When you drive through the countryside, you see blue silos. Well, those were really kind of a high end. It was able to keep the contents from molding, and that was pretty nice. Let's see. They would pick corn, but our season wasn't long enough there to really get corn hard. So if you did want to pick your corn, you had to let it set most of the winter so that it would dry out, and then you could pick it. And
what was your favorite dish growing up?
Food?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't macaroni and cheese. Yeah, just about anything Mom made was awesome. I mean, she was a good cook. But she couldn't cook steak, though. I mean, anytime we had steak, it was as tough as leather. And I think she was afraid of it having poisons in it. So, or if it wasn't cooked enough, you could get worms. But other than that, great desserts. Always had desserts. She wasn't afraid to try cooking something, and I think I learned that from her, how to make things and bake them. And I still fix some of those foods that she had done.
Yeah. How was your recent mincemeat?
Well, about 5 years before Mom passed away, I told her I'd wanted to make mincemeat, and with her. So one of my trips back to Minnesota, we made mincemeat pie, and it was fun to make because she did it right. She found the recipe that her grandmother had and that her mom had used and that she had used. So we were pretty instrumental in getting that thing. So then, so I was thankful for that time to be able to do that with her. And then I, last year, maybe 2 years ago, I did the mincemeat pie, and it turned out excellent. Everybody that tried it loved it, because everybody go, oh no, mincemeat pie, and when they ate the original, authentic, it was fantastic. So we did that, and
you used a hybrid of recipes?
What kind?
A hybrid? Like you took 3 different recipes and took the parts you thought would be best?
Yeah, my mom sent me, I had hers, and then my cousin had theirs. That varied just a little bit, and then I used the internet for some of the other stuff. But it just made it really good, and I'm going to do it again this year. Mike, that we were just out to see in Alaska, he goes, oh, mincemeat, that's my favorite pie. And I'm going, oh man, and so my head starts spinning on how do I get that to Mike, and I'm sure I could can it, But
They were saying that they make it through a can with store-bought stuff.
yeah, no, that'll make them sick. So anyway, but that was funny. We did do a rhubarb crunch that my mom had made, and so we made that this weekend. I got out to Alaska and thinking that there wouldn't be any rhubarb, and we went to a restaurant that was outside. It was in their garden box. So I asked if I could have some, and they said, sure, and go ahead, knock yourself out. So we took it, and then when I was going home, I saw everybody had it. And Jane even had some, but thank goodness she did.
But we couldn't find it in a store.
Yeah, we couldn't find it in a store. It was too early. So we had rhubarb crunch last night, and it was delicious. I was wanting some today, but
we used some light brown sugar on accident.
Okay.
But
yeah,
it was still good. It just kept us up all night.
A little sweet. Yeah, I think we were on a high.
But it turned out perfect, and it may be not as flaky because we used the margarine, but
right.
It was still perfect.
It was good.
Everyone tried it and loved it.
Oh yeah, and it's something they hadn't tasted, and I think that's it. When you haven't tasted something and it tastes good, and you succeeded, then that's fantastic.
We can stop.
Oh, we would skate on the ice when it would freeze in the winter. We skated on the ice ponds, and when we moved back to Minnesota in '90 to help Dallas and his family with their election, we got to do all the things that I did when I was a kid. The kids got to. They were skated, and we pulled them on a toboggan over to Roddy's. The only trouble is that Spencer fell off, and I still remember looking back and seeing the fear in his eyes, thinking that we were leaving him forever in the middle of a snow jungle. And so we turned around and picked him up.
It was only a block from home.
Yeah, it wasn't that far from home, but when everything was white, it's kind of scares you. So we took him over to Roddy and Jan's, and then turned around and came home.
Did you grow up with farm cats?
We always had cats.
They were mousers?
That's what kept the mouse population down.
Yeah.
And
what about dogs?
yeah, we always had dogs. We had Wimpy, and we had Gypsy.
What were they? What kind?
Kind of like an English Shepherd type of a dog.
Yeah.
And good. They were always good cattle dogs. I brought home a couple one time, different times from Minneapolis. One was a collie, and it was beautiful, laddie, but he was dumber than a box of rocks, and he ran out in front of a tractor trailer and ended his life. And then the other one was Laddie, and he was pretty good. And but the cats were just barn cats, and what can you say about that? We had pigs in the barn when we were.
I remember you had when we went back in '90, there was like a kind of dark calico cat, and it would hang out in the barn a lot. And when we started exploring the barn, we found the second layer, and we found that we could climb up the hay bales and get up there. It became kind of like a secret hideout, even though it wasn't secret.
Right.
But
right.
I remember going up there with Anna and Julia. And when we first moved to Minnesota, I remember we were on a different lot in that double wide.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah and I went out in the forest, and we didn't know anything, but we're just walking around. All of a sudden we hear gunshots, and Sarah grabs me and she's like, "Please don't shoot me and my brother." It was so foreign to us because we are, from California.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
never heard a gunshot in our life. So it was surprising.
Yeah.
What do you remember from the drive out there other than 4 kids being annoying?
No, that wasn't annoying at all.
You have a smile.
We, coming from California, your mother wasn't very happy that we were going back, and I can't blame her looking back now, because Dad asked us if we would come back and help him in Dallas, because Dallas was running for the state senate. So I told Dad, something just grabbed me. I've never had that happen in my life, but something grabbed me and said, you got to go back. So I told him, yeah, okay. So and Sarah wanted to go back and be back there. So we got back to California, and I told Bonnie, I says, we got to go back and help Dallas with the election and help Dad farm. And Mom cried and cried. Bonnie cried. She didn't want to go back. And but we did it, and she was there for us. And while we were driving, Spencer, you want to tell about Pee Wee Herman?
Crossing the legs?
When you're two different rigs and cell phones weren't available, we were driving, and
anytime one of us had to pee in the back car, we would hold Pee Wee Herman out the window with the legs crossed, and then the front car would pull over, and we'd all pull over.
Well, that was quite a trip, We finally made it, got there, and then that's when the fun began. I didn't want to smell like cow after I'd been out milking him, so I tried to shower every time I went into the house and make it so I wasn't like a farm boy, and that was a little tough. And then the farm help and his wife left, and so then Mom and Dad in Dallas moved the single wide mobile home onto the home place where I'd originally put one 18 years before that.
And that was just behind their house.
That was just behind their house.
Like 30 feet away.
Yeah, you could have been in a snowstorm and not got lost. So yeah, that was a mistake. But so we moved that there, and then Dallas got elected into the Senate, and
were you in his parade?
No, but you kids were, and so that was pretty good. And then Mom and Dad decided to go to Arizona for the winter, and left me and Bonnie and the kids to milk all the cows and feed the young stock, and birth the new babies. But that was part of the growing period. The kids didn't mind it. Spencer was too young to milk cows, but he did drive the Bobcat and help me with while the kids were in school. And I'm trying to think what happened next. So then the folks go to Arizona, Dallas goes to the Senate, and it got to be quite a bit of work. So there was a young kid came by that went to Votech school in Staples, and he came by and asked if I needed help. And well, I hired him right on the spot. Nice guy, Jay was his name. The last name was Baird, and Jay was a good guy, and he really helped me out. He was a hard worker, and he was from south and east, south and west of where we were.
How did he find you?
His dad told him, he said, hey, why don't you go by that big dairy farm and see if they need help. And that's how come Jay came by and helped us. He was a good worker. And then he did come out, and when we came back to California, he came back out and stayed with us for about 10 months. Great young guy.
What about the time we went to a lake and were fishing and Julia caught a catfish by the eye?
Well, that was at Jay's cabin.
Okay.
Jay's mom and dad had a cabin. I can't think of the name of the town. Lester Prairie. And he took us out in the pontoon and was letting the kids fish. and that was kind of sad. And there was a dead carp in the lake on top of that. But the kids caught some um, crappies and some sunfish, and had fun doing that. That was good.
Do you remember the time that we stayed at the house you were doing cabinets in, I think? With the pool in the backyard? And the girls dressed me up, or I wore a bathing suit of theirs. And
Was it in a lake?
It was out here. It was in California.
That was when we went up to Van Nuys and spent 2 weeks up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a night.
Oh yeah, no, it was.
I remembered we watched Indiana Jones.
Oh
For
really?
the first time.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where the rats fall. And I had a dream that happened, and I couldn't sleep a wink after that. But I only remember like that one night, and then pictures of me in a
Little
bathing
tutu.
suit. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Spencer.
No, it's funny.
When we when we got married, Bonnie and I had come out to her brother's wedding, and I know we're jumping around here a little bit, but Ray Van Gelder was Pam's dad, Leslie's new father-in-law, and it was really nice guy, really nice guy. He liked me. He was from Iowa, and he hired me. So then when we came out here, I worked for him. And if it wasn't for him and coming out to that wedding, I wouldn't have been a cabinet maker. But he was very good, and then he sold the business right after that, and so another guy took it. And as soon as I found out what I was doing, we moved back down to Fallbrook, California. And that was up in Van Nuys and in the valley, in the San Fernando Valley.
And you were riding a bike to work?
I did that in San Clemente.
Okay.
I was riding a bike.
And you fell.
I almost fell.
Yeah.
I caught my
Pedal on a turn.
pedal. I pedaled, and when I was down, I turned the corner, and this threw me out. And I wasn't very experienced in bicycle riding. I wasn't very coordinated, I guess. And that was a nice year. We had moved up to San Clemente, California, and I set up a shop. We met another guy that was building a condominium complex, and I can't remember how many he had in it, but it was really nice. Did pretty high-end cabinets in it, and then after that, then we moved to Washington State. But Kurt Metling was the guy that was building the condo, and Bob Klimple from Fallbrook told me about him. He said, well, why don't you work for this guy? So we went up there, lived in San Clemente, which was great. We had a great time there. And then we moved to Seattle because Bonnie's twin sister was there, Lonnie, and her husband, Glenn. And at the time, I think they only had one child, that was Kara. And so that was quite an experience to do that. Then we left there. We heard that there was no more septics going to be put in Fallbrook, and they were doing a moratorium on it. So we go, what are we going to do? And then Lonnie had mentioned that they were really, things were good in Seattle, so we went to Seattle. And that was in 1981. And if you look back, you'll see that 1982, a pretty bad recession. The interest rates were at 18 to 19% interest, and it kind of made it hard to get a job. But I found a job when we went up there, and I worked for Saw Cabinets. And then there was a couple that were friends of Lonnie and Glenn's, Jay and Jerry Curcio, and they needed cabinets. So I built their cabinets, and in Lonnie and Glenn's garage, and we hauled them out there and installed. And so that's what carried us through. So we stayed there for 7 years, and we had um, added, then by that time, then we had Julia, and she was born in Arlington, Washington, at home. And then we moved to Marysville, Washington, which is about 10 miles away, maybe not quite. And then when we did that, then we had Spencer, and in a little Rambler. And then when he was 3.5, we moved back to California. But there was a lot of fun times. A lot of the kids enjoyed it there. Looking back, maybe we shouldn't have left because we kind of abandoned Lonnie's kids and Lonnie.
That wasn't a good job, though.
But yeah, it worked out okay.
What was your first car?
Oh, my first car. Royal and I bought a car together. When you're twins, when you're farm, I don't know, something happened. We didn't have a car when we went to Minneapolis, so the folks gave us their car to use.
Why'd you go to Minneapolis?
We had to go to Minneapolis to get a job.
Okay.
Nobody stayed on the farm.
Yeah.
You went to Minneapolis. So, and I don't think I ever should have gone, but we did. We had taken Votech school during high school, so we had 3 hours a day that we did machine shop. So by the time we graduated high school, we were machinists, or on the way, and so we moved to Minneapolis. Used the folks' car. I think it was a Galaxy, Ford Galaxy, and so finally we decided that we had to buy a car of our own, and so Royal and I both bought together. We bought a 1967 Super Sport Impala, 4 on the floor. I mean, it was loaded. It was big honking old thing, and so we bought that. Folks got their car back, and then Royal started dating Sharon. And at that point, then what do? You know, I couldn't go home on the weekends because Royal went to Duluth to see Sharon, and so we decided that I should buy a car. So I bought a car, bought Royal out. No, Royal bought me out, and I bought a little Plymouth Belvedere, a little black and white car. I can't imagine. I can't remember even what I paid for it. Maybe $2,700, something like that.
Why did you buy it?
1966, 67.
No, why?
67. Why did I buy it?
Yeah.
Because I didn't have transportation. Royal.
No, but wasn't it like more of a family car?
No, that one wasn't. Okay, so I bought that little thing, a little black and white car, and then and then I was bringing a friend of mine that was going to Vietnam. I took him and his mom down for him to enlist, and then she was going to take the bus home. And on the way down, there was an old retired pastor pulled out right in front of us as we were going to Minneapolis. We were 15 miles from being where we had to be, and I had offered to take Lloyd and his mom, Lorraine, to the airport or to the bus depot or where he had to sign up, and we had that crash, and I remember seeing the people coming for me, and I turned this way, so that kept us from hitting the old couple sideways, otherwise that would have killed them. And Fred's mom, or Lloyd's mom, his brother was Fred, who was afraid of dialysis, skinned her shins up, and she got ulcers on her shins. But that wrecked my little Plymouth Belvedere. So then the guy that I bought my next car from was a Plymouth Fury 3, and I wanted something that would last me, and if I got married that I could have that, and it was nice. It was pretty deluxe. The only problem was that within 4 years it had rusted out, and so I had to have a bunch of work done on it. And then by that time, Bonnie and I were married, and we decided to move to California. And a good friend of mine, Sam Gertner, said, "Hey, you can't drive that to California; it'll never make it." I go, "What do you mean? It's only 4 or 5 years old." And he went through it for me, and 2 days before we left, and he fixed everything on it and made it so it was roadworthy. So then we left with Sarah and a couple of bags packed, and we left. And I think we got here, and then Lonnie's husband flew back with me to Minnesota, and then we loaded up all of our stuff and came back to California. But nobody was happy that we did that. But what do you do? We were married. We were married in '73. That was a '68, and so that was 5 years old, and then 2.5 more years, and then we left the farm, and came out to California. So that's how we got to California. That's how I got my Plymouth Fury 3, and the rust held it together till we got, I think it was July 4th of that year, from March to July 4th, and we finally drove it into the Honda dealership and bought a little tiny Honda Civic, I think it was.
Yeah.
Little tiny orange thing.
The cutest little.
It was cute, yeah. And
I see him. That's the most rare car on the road now.
really.
Oh,
really.
I never see him. I saw one like 5 years ago, and it's just like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, it was good. It was good for us.
Was it that like summer orange or whatever that color was?
Yeah, it wasn't burnt orange, but it was.
Yeah, like a harvest orange.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
When how long? When Sarah was born, how did stuff change? How did your life change? Like what did you become serious or like were you on the farm?
We were on the farm. We had been married about 2 years, and then we had Sarah, and Bonnie was having pretty much a lot of trouble with the family trying to incorporate, and she was feeling like she was having to change quite a bit, and Sarah was not happy baby. She had colic, and so we finally, one day Bonnie was crying, and I held her, and I said, somehow God will get us out of here, but we have to leave at the right time. We can't just up and leave. And I don't know what it was, but Bonnie fainted, and it was kind of like, it was, if you want to say God caused it or what, to me, it was a sign that God was doing something, that He was going to get us out of there. So we talked to the folks, and I forget when. Sarah was born the last day of the year, and we left March 5th, I think it was.
So you drove from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Down
to California.
A 5-day trip.
It was
with a 3-month-old.
Yeah. And a lot of people go, "Oh, Bonnie finally got you out of there, huh?" And that wasn't the fact. We just kind of had to get out of there. There's a lot of guilt involved in it. Why would we leave the folks in such a situation? And so, but I think any couple you talk to that are in a situation like that, you have to make decisions, and they're not always the ones you want. So then we did leave, and we made it to Uncle Lindell's, and it's kind of straight run south, and stayed there for a day, and then we left the next day, and then we drove on through. I forget where we stayed, and then about a month later, Glenn flew back with me to Minnesota and got a U-Haul, and we should have just left everything there. But when as belongings, you take them. So we went
Starting
back.
over is hard.
Oh, it is. It is. So we started basically in our marriage. We started over about 5 times, and so that's that's what we ended up with anything. Um, but we did go back and loaded up everything, and I was glad Glenn was with me. He really helped me out. And I said, everybody's not wanting me to leave. He said, I can leave. I can go fly back. I don't need to go. You don't need to go if you don't want to. And I go, no, I have to. So then we came out, stayed with Bonnie's folks for about 2 weeks, and her and her mom found an apartment for us, and so we stayed there. And then Ray Van Gelder called me. Well, the guy at the Assemblies Church in Fallbrook that gave me a job, but when you're supposed to be a framer and you're scared of heights and you don't know how to do anything, it's pretty tough. So then Ray Van Gelder called and he says, hey, Doyall, he said, the Lord laid you on my heart. How would you like to learn how to do cabinets? And I go, he said, I'll give you $6 an hour and 40 hours a week. And I'm going, holy cow. I was doing $4 an hour and 20 hours a week. I go, this sounds pretty good to me. So I had to drive up to LA. I got lost. I didn't know where I was at. I was looking for
You took the little Civic up there?
Yeah.
No air conditioning?
No.
What time of year is it? April?
It was
May?
Yeah, May probably by that time, maybe June. And
so summer heat, you're sitting in the car with no AC, driving up to LA.
Yeah. And can't think of the name of that. It was one of the main thoroughfares.
Studio City?
Yeah. No, it was in Moreno Valley, San Marino. Very expensive place, very huge houses. So Ray and I are measuring up these walls and taking dimensions, and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is great. Cabinet making is wonderful. And I never saw the outside of the shop for another 1.5 years. So that was kind of like.
Where was his shop?
In Van Nuys, off of Sepulveda and Sherman Way.
So did you stay up there for the week and then come back? Or
I did it first, and then we moved in with Ray's brother.
Okay.
What was his
So
name?
it was you, Mom, Sarah,
And that was it.
Ray's brother.
And Ray's brother and his daughter Jolene, and they had a huge home. Like we could have the bedroom on this end, and Harry was on the other end. And it worked out really good. He was so happy. He's like, he had a family, and Bonnie fixed the night meal for all of us. And